Aboard the Zervani Empire's deep space survey vessel Voralis, Captain Zyvan stared at the holographic display with mild disinterest. The latest scans had revealed an unremarkable planet in a backwater star system, its surface teeming with carbon-based lifeforms. "This one looks primitive," muttered Zyvan, flicking his clawed fingers across the controls. Data on the planet scrolled across the holographic interface: third planet from its star, rich biosphere, and an evolving sentient species still confined to their homeworld. Limited space travel, nuclear energy, primitive artificial intelligence, barely worthy of note. His second-in-command, a lean, silver-skinned Zervani named Tavrek, analyzed the readings. "They call themselves humans," he said. "They've only recently begun exploring beyond their own planet." Zyvan scoffed. "Another insignificant species grasping at the stars. The Empire has encountered countless civilizations like this before, ambitious, but ultimately weak. Mark the planet for long-term observation and move on." But before Tavrek could confirm the order, a new data stream interrupted. Multiple vessels detected, human-made satellites, orbital stations, and a deep space probe moving beyond their planetary system. Zyvan narrowed his eyes. "They're reaching beyond their world already? That's unusual." Tavrek tapped a control panel, bringing up intercepted transmissions. The human languages were rapidly decoded, revealing messages of scientific discovery, technological advancements, and discussions of a unified effort to push further into space. The humans were more ambitious than anticipated. "They might be useful," Tavrek suggested. "The Empire could integrate them early. A controlled species can be an asset." Zyvan considered this. The Zervani had long ruled the galaxy, absorbing or crushing lesser species. Yet something about humanity's rapid development was intriguing. Perhaps early intervention would prevent them from becoming a threat. "Very well," he said. "Prepare a scouting team for first contact." On Earth, inside a covert facility deep beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Evelyn Carter stood before a team of scientists and military officials. The atmosphere in the room was thick with anticipation. "We've detected something," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "Anomalous signals, possibly originating from outside our solar system." General Marcus Holloway leaned forward. "Extraterrestrial?" Dr. Carter nodded. "Most likely. But here's the catch: it's not natural. It's scanning us." The room fell into silence. For decades, humanity had speculated about extraterrestrial life. Now, the question had been answered. But if someone was watching Earth, the real question became, what did they want? "We can't afford to be caught off guard," Holloway said grimly. "Initiate the next phase of Project Aegis. If they're coming, we need to be ready." Unbeknownst to the Zervani, the so-called primitive species was already preparing for war. The moment the Zervani ships entered Earth's orbit, the global response was swift. For weeks, military and scientific teams around the world had prepared for the unthinkable, yet nothing could truly prepare humanity for what came next. The aliens' vessels, massive and sleek, descended like dark omens over Earth's largest cities. Every nation on Earth paused, their leaders gathered in a tense silence, watching as the strange ships loomed over their capitals. They had hoped for a peaceful first contact, but deep down, humanity knew this was likely the beginning of something far more dangerous. "Prepare for communication," General Holloway ordered from his underground command center. Across the globe, similar orders were given. Humanity's military, for all its might, was no match for the advanced technology of the Zervani. But there was one thing the aliens had underestimated: the stubborn, unyielding nature of humanity. A holographic figure appeared in the skies above New York City, a representative of the Zervani Empire, towering and imposing. His form was humanoid but adorned in intricate, golden armor, his alien features sharp and calculated. "People of Earth," the figure's voice boomed in every language on the planet. "We come not as conquerors, but as liberators. The Zervani Empire offers you a place among the stars. You shall kneel before us, and in return, we will share the knowledge of the cosmos with you." For a moment, there was silence. The offer was tempting, too tempting. And yet, as humanity's leaders stood in their war rooms and bunkers, something primal stirred within them. This offer of liberation felt more like a cage, a gilded one, but a cage nonetheless. Dr. Carter, listening intently to the transmission from her lab, exchanged looks with General Holloway. "They believe we'll submit," she muttered under her breath. "But we can't give in. This is their test. If we show any sign of weakness, we'll never have the chance to escape their control." The president, from the secure location in the White House, took a deep breath. "We don't kneel to anyone," he said firmly. "Prepare for the response." The Zervani emissary's tone hardened as he continued, "You will accept our terms, or we will burn your cities to the ground. Choose wisely." The words hit like a physical blow. The threat was real. Earth's defenses, though formidable in their own right, were no match for the full might of the Zervani Empire. Yet something stirred within humanity, a refusal to bow. General Holloway tapped a button on his console, and an encrypted message was sent to every nation's leaders, a single word flashing in bold letters: resist. Within hours, Earth's militaries rallied, but it wasn't just the soldiers who prepared. Across the world, people stood in defiance. Protests broke out in every major city, demanding that humanity stand its ground. The Zervani made their move. Within minutes, the first strike came. Massive energy beams shot down from the hovering ships, vaporizing entire city blocks, a terrifying display of power. New York, London, Tokyo, each of these met the same fate. But rather than cower, humanity united. In secret military facilities, Earth's top engineers and scientists scrambled to put the final touches on a series of countermeasures they had been working on for years. The Zervani's arrogance had blinded them to the true extent of humanity's potential. They had underestimated Earth's greatest weapon, ingenuity. An hour later, humanity struck back. The first counterattack was not with force, but with cunning. A small team of human engineers, using reverse-engineered alien technology, deployed an electromagnetic pulse over the entire eastern seaboard, disabling Zervani systems temporarily. The attack was small but effective enough to send the aliens reeling. The Zervani emissary's voice rang out, filled with fury. "You dare defy us?" he demanded, his eyes flashing with anger. "You shall regret this. We will not be so merciful again." But as they struck back with even more destructive force, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. Rather than break, they stood together, defying the most advanced empire in the galaxy. Earth would not surrender. The fight for independence had only just begun. And yet, beneath the surface of this burgeoning war, a secret alliance was forming, an alliance between Earth and the rebel factions that had long opposed the Zervani's reign. These species, once subjugated, had seen humanity's defiance and knew they had found allies in their quest for freedom. Dr. Carter looked to the screen. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for the galaxy." With that, Earth's first true victory in this galactic war had begun, an unexpected betrayal of the Zervani's expectations. Humanity would not kneel. The Zervani Empire's retaliatory strikes had left Earth in ruins, but it had also sparked something profound within humanity. In the wreckage of their cities and amidst the global chaos, the human spirit burned brighter than ever. Earth's military forces, despite being overwhelmed, fought back fiercely. Yet, as the war stretched on, it became clear that Earth couldn't win alone. It was time to seek allies, or more accurately, to be sought. Far beyond the fringes of the Zervani-controlled territories, the cry for freedom had not fallen on deaf ears. Several species that had suffered under the Empire's iron fist began to take note of humanity's courage. One such faction, the Arivians, a reptilian species known for their cunning and speed, had long been hunted by the Zervani as a slave race. Their homeworld, a barren desert planet, had been reduced to rubble by Zervani conquest. Captain Raktor, a grizzled Arivian warlord, watched the broadcasts of Earth's resistance. He had heard the rumblings of rebellion from the underworlds of galactic space but hadn't dared believe it. Until now. The human resistance, though unrefined, demonstrated something the Zervani feared: defiance. Raktor gathered his closest allies, a coalition of ragtag warriors from various oppressed species. Their combined fleets were barely a fraction of the Zervani's power, but their desire for freedom was undeniable. They knew they needed humanity. "I never thought I'd see the day when humans might rise up," Raktor grunted as he addressed his council. "But they've proven their worth. We need to act before the Zervani wipe them out. It's time we join them." The Erivian fleet, along with a few small but well-armed rebel ships, made their way to Earth. They moved in secret, avoiding Zervani patrols, until they reached the human-controlled space stations just beyond Earth's atmosphere. General Holloway received the encrypted message from the Erivian fleet late one night, his brow furrowing as he decrypted the strange coordinates. His eyes widened when the message came through: "We are the Erivians. We fight for freedom, and we offer our strength to your cause, ****. Despite their initial distrust, Holloway knew humanity couldn't survive this war alone. The Zervani were a force unlike any the galaxy had seen. But if these alien rebels were willing to join the fight, perhaps it was the chance Earth needed. "We can't afford to be picky right now," Holloway muttered, staring at the screen as he sent a response. "Tell them to dock at the designated coordinates. It's time to meet our new allies." When Raktor's fleet docked on Earth's largest space station, it was clear this was a pivotal moment in the war. The first true meeting between humanity and alien rebels was tense. The humans, wary but hopeful, lined the airlocks, while Raktor's fleet, small and battered, was flanked by warriors of various alien species. The Erivians were led by Raktor himself, his scaly face stern and calculating. General Holloway, flanked by Dr. Carter and a few military advisors, stepped forward as the airlock opened. The Erivians stepped out in formation, their sleek, armored bodies casting long shadows against the station's sterile walls. At their head stood Raktor, his reptilian eyes locking onto Holloway's. "You stand against the Zervani?" Raktor's voice was a low growl, heavy with both curiosity and respect. "We do," Holloway replied, his voice steady. "And we need your help." The tension was palpable. Raktor studied the human general for a long moment, sizing him up. Then, with a deep nod, he spoke again. "We are willing to join your fight. The Zervani have hunted us for too long. We seek revenge, but more than that, we seek freedom. And in your defiance, we see the spark of hope. The galaxy needs hope." A murmur of agreement ran through the alien rebels behind him. Humans had shown the courage they lacked for generations, there was no turning back now. Dr. Carter, standing just behind Holloway, stepped forward with a sharp smile. "We've been working on technology that can turn the tide, weaponry, defense systems, and most importantly, strategies that the Zervani will never expect. We just need your ships to help deploy them." Raktor's eyes gleamed with interest. "And what do you require in return?" "Help us break the Zervani's chokehold on the galaxy," Holloway replied. "Together, we can shatter their empire. We don't want just to survive, we want to change the balance of power." For a long moment, Raktor said nothing. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. "Then it is agreed. We fight together. But understand this, no one, not even the Zervani, will ever stand in our way again." As the first official meeting between humans and the Erivian rebels concluded, Holloway felt a spark of hope. It was a fleeting feeling, but it was there. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were on the verge of something greater. With the Erivians and their allies by their side, humanity might just have a chance to take down the Zervani. But as they left the station to plan the next phase of the war, Holloway knew they had only begun to unravel the web of political intrigue that lay at the heart of the Zervani Empire. Earth and its allies were playing a dangerous game, but for the first time in centuries, they had hope on their side. With the newly forged alliance between humanity and the Erivian rebels, the war against the Zervani Empire entered a new, more dangerous phase. Humanity's resistance had proven resilient, but now, with alien allies at their side, they were about to show the galaxy just how fiercely they could fight. The first joint mission was a daring raid on a Zervani weapons factory located on the icy moon of Valthar 7, a heavily fortified installation that supplied the Empire's front lines with advanced weaponry. Earth's forces had managed to decipher some of the Zervani's encrypted communications, revealing the location of this critical facility. If they could destroy it, they could cripple the Zervani's military capabilities, at least temporarily. General Holloway, now commanding an army of humans and rebel forces, stood before his commanders in the dimly lit war room. Tactical displays flickered across the walls, detailing the factory's defenses and layout. "This is our chance," Holloway said, his voice steady despite the mounting tension. "The Zervani won't expect us to strike their most secure facility. If we pull this off, it'll send a message across the galaxy that Earth and its allies are not to be underestimated." Raktor, now Earth's primary military advisor, leaned forward, his eyes glowing with determination. "The Arivians will provide the vanguard," he said. "We've trained our soldiers for years in guerrilla warfare, and we know the Zervani's tactics better than they know their own. Your humans have strength, your courage, and that will be enough to get us past their defenses." Dr. Carter, who had become an invaluable strategist, stood to the side, tapping her fingers on a digital tablet. "I've integrated some of the Zervani's own weapons technology into our arsenal. With these enhancements, our chances of breaching their outer walls have increased significantly. But the real key will be timing. We hit them fast, we hit them hard, and we don't give them a chance to regroup." The plan was set. Earth's fleet, along with the Arivian rebel ships, would make a surprise assault on Valthar 7, disabling its planetary defenses and striking at the heart of the Zervani operation. The humans, using their newly developed weaponry and tactics, would infiltrate the facility and destroy its core reactors. As the Alliance forces moved into position, Holloway stood on the bridge of the USS Titan, Earth's flagship. The stars stretched out before them, an endless expanse of dark space. His heart raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. For the first time, humanity wasn't just defending their planet, they were taking the fight to the Zervani. "We're ready, General," Lieutenant Sarah Aldridge, Holloway's right-hand officer, reported. "We've synced our attack time with the rebel fleet. All ships are in position." "Good," Holloway replied, his voice firm. "Execute the plan." The ships moved in silence, their hulls cutting through space like shadows. As they neared Valthar 7, they encountered no resistance. The Zervani were expecting a different sort of attack, perhaps from one of their neighboring systems, but not from a combined force of humans and rebels. This would be their first mistake. As the fleet approached the moon's orbit, a swarm of fighter ships launched from the rebel vessels, darting toward the moon's surface. The humans, armed with experimental energy shields and pulse weapons, followed close behind. The Zervani's planetary defense guns began firing, but Earth's fleet was faster, more maneuverable than anything the Zervani had anticipated. "Shields up! Brace for impact!" Holloway barked as his ship was rocked by an explosion from a near-miss. The USS Titan swerved, its engines powering through the shockwaves. The rebel ships, nimble and quick, engaged the Zervani's outer defense stations, taking them out one by one. The humans, on the other hand, deployed their new energy weapons, punching holes through the heavily armored exterior of the factory's fortress-like walls. On the surface, Earth's ground forces, human soldiers and Arivian warriors alike, stormed the facility. The Zervani garrison, caught off guard, struggled to mount a defense. Yet even in the face of overwhelming numbers, the humans pressed forward with brutal efficiency. They had trained for this moment. Their combat doctrine, blending human ingenuity with the guerrilla tactics of the Arivians, was devastatingly effective. General Holloway and Raktor led the charge, side by side, cutting down Zervani soldiers with ruthless precision. The rebels fought fiercely, but it was the humans who brought the chaos. They didn't fight for glory, they fought to win. "Push forward!" Holloway yelled over the din of battle. "The reactor is just ahead. We take it now, or we risk losing everything." The soldiers, fueled by a mixture of fear and determination, surged forward, breaking through the Zervani's last line of defense. As they reached the heart of the factory, Dr. Carter's team deployed their explosives on the core reactor. A final, deafening explosion rattled the facility to its core. The mission was a success. The Zervani weapons factory, their most vital supply chain for war, was reduced to rubble. As the human and rebel forces regrouped, the damage was clear. The Zervani Empire had been dealt a serious blow, but the war was far from over. Raktor, bloodied but unbowed, clapped Holloway on the back. "This will be remembered. You've earned our respect." Holloway nodded, his eyes focused on the devastation around them. "This is just the beginning. We can win this war, but only if we keep the flames of resistance burning." The destruction of the Zervani weapons factory on Valthar 7 was a pivotal moment in the war, an undeniable statement that Earth and its newfound allies could strike back, that they could harm the seemingly invincible Zervani Empire. But while the victory was sweet, it was also a spark that ignited the fury of the Zervani, who had underestimated their foes. Now, with the war spreading across multiple fronts, Earth's resistance was on the cusp of something far greater, and far more dangerous. Back on Earth, General Holloway sat in a command center, his eyes tired but burning with a renewed sense of purpose. The victory had cost them. Many had fallen in the assault on Valthar 7, including some of the most experienced soldiers in the human and Arivian ranks. But it had been worth it. The galaxy was now aware that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. And that made Holloway's next decision even harder. "We've hit them where it hurts, but this isn't over," Holloway said, his voice resolute. "We've got to keep the pressure on, or we'll lose all we've gained." "Dr. Carter, what's the status of the new weaponry?" Dr. Carter, who had been working tirelessly on new technologies, glanced up from her console. "We've managed to reverse engineer Zervani tech to some degree, but we're still behind in terms of firepower. The real advantage we have is in our ability to think outside the box. We've developed a new kind of stealth ship, undetectable to Zervani sensors, and we're testing it now. If it works, we can strike at the heart of the Empire itself." Holloway nodded, though a flicker of doubt passed through him. Striking the Zervani capital, while tempting, was a risk. It was one thing to take out a weapons factory on a remote moon, it was another to attack the very center of their power. The Zervani would not let this go unanswered. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth's borders, Raktor stood at the head of a council meeting with leaders of the rebel factions. The Arivian warlord's reputation had only grown since their successful mission on Valthar 7. He had proven that his people were not to be underestimated, and in his eyes, humanity had proven themselves worthy allies. Yet he knew the stakes were higher now. "We've caused them significant losses, but the Zervani will retaliate with everything they have," Raktor growled. "If we are to continue this war, we must strike decisively. Our goal is no longer just survival, it's domination." A murmured agreement ran through the room. The rebel leaders had long been subjugated by the Zervani and understood the cost of this war. Many of them had already lost everything, but they weren't ready to give up yet. Their alliances with humanity had brought them renewed hope. "General Holloway believes we're ready," Raktor said, "and I agree. Our next move must be bold. We've identified several key Zervani strongholds that we can target, but the main objective should be their supply lines. If we cripple them, they'll fall. It's time to put them on the defensive." The rebel factions moved swiftly, preparing for the next phase of their campaign. They couldn't afford to wait and let the Zervani regroup. Every day that passed, the Empire strengthened its resolve. But every day that passed, so did humanity's confidence. The Zervani, now reeling from the loss of their weapons factory, gathered their forces. Their fleet, the largest in the galaxy, began to mobilize as they planned their revenge. Commander Cawthorn, the Zervani general tasked with eliminating the human threat, issued orders to bring Earth's forces to their knees. "We underestimated them once," Cawthorn said, his voice cold and calculating. "We will not make that mistake again. They will bow to the might of the Empire." The Zervani fleet surged toward Earth's defenses, their firepower overwhelming. But Holloway and his allies were ready. With the new stealth ships and upgraded tactics, they launched a series of surprise attacks, disabling key Zervani outposts. The stealth ships allowed them to bypass Zervani sensors, striking at critical supply routes and weakening the Empire's hold on the galaxy. Back on Earth, as the Zervani fleet neared, Holloway stood with Dr. Carter and Raktor in the command center. The battle was imminent. But this time, Earth's forces were no longer hiding. They were going to take the fight to the enemy, aggressively, strategically. "We've got one shot at this," Holloway said, his voice tight. "We need to hit them hard, strike at the heart of their supply chain, and force them to retreat. If we fail, Earth may not survive another attack." "We won't fail," Raktor said, his voice low but full of conviction. "The Zervani may have the numbers, but they don't have the resolve that we do." As the battle began, it was clear that this was a turning point in the war. Earth's alliance with the Arivians and other rebel factions was starting to pay off. The Zervani were being forced to fight for survival. For the first time since the war had begun, it seemed as though the balance of power was truly shifting. The fight for freedom was no longer a battle for survival, it was a battle for dominance. And humanity, alongside its alien allies, was determined to win. The tides of war had begun to shift in humanity's favor. With the help of their alien allies, Earth's forces had dealt crippling blows to the Zervani Empire. But the Empire, wounded but not defeated, was preparing its retaliation. General Holloway could feel the storm coming. The Zervani would not let these humiliating losses go unanswered. They would fight with everything they had. On the bridge of the USS Titan, Holloway stood before a display of the latest intelligence. The Zervani had begun assembling a new fleet, a massive armada intended to crush the human rebellion once and for all. The fleet was gathering in the Orden sector, a strategic position just a few light-years from Earth's defenses. The Zervani were coming, and they were bringing their full might. "We've only got a few days before they arrive," Holloway said, his tone grim. "Dr. Carter, how soon can we deploy the new defense systems?" Dr. Carter, who had been working non-stop, looked up from her console. "We've got the new pulse shields ready, but we need time to install them across all stations. If we can hold them off long enough, we'll have a fighting chance. But if they hit us first, we're going to be in serious trouble." Holloway nodded, feeling the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He knew the Zervani were ruthless, but this was something different. The Empire's pride had been bruised, and they were coming for revenge. Meanwhile, Raktor and his Arivian forces were preparing for the worst. The Arivians, who had fought for so long on the fringes of the galaxy, now stood shoulder to shoulder with humanity in a battle for survival. Raktor paced in his war room, his claws clicking against the cold metal floor. "The Zervani are angry, and they are coming for us," Raktor muttered to his closest advisors. "But we have something they don't. We have unity. We have the will to fight, no matter the odds. We will not let them crush us." One of his commanders, a fierce Arivian warrior named Vasha, stepped forward. "We should hit them before they reach Earth. If we can weaken their fleet at the Orden sector, we might force them to turn back." Raktor considered this for a moment before giving a decisive nod. "Agreed. We'll hit them hard and fast. No one gets through our lines." Back on Earth, General Holloway prepared for the inevitable clash. The defense grids were being fortified, and every available ship was called into action. Humanity's forces had grown in strength, thanks to their cooperation with the alien rebels, but they still lacked the firepower to take on the full might of the Zervani. "This is it," Holloway said, addressing his commanders. "We hold our ground here, or we lose everything we've fought for. We need every ship, every soldier, to be ready for what's coming. They think they can crush us. Let's show them they're wrong." The Zervani fleet arrived at the Orden sector with terrifying speed. The armada was massive, hundreds of warships, each one equipped with devastating weaponry, looming in the black void of space. But Earth's defenses, bolstered by the new pulse shields and the rebel fleet, were ready. The first shots rang out as the two forces clashed in the cold expanse of space. The Zervani attacked with brutal efficiency, their warships like an unstoppable tide crashing against Earth's defenses. For a moment, it seemed as if the Zervani would break through. But then, the pulse shields activated, enveloping Earth's ships in a protective barrier that absorbed the Zervani's initial assault. The human fleet, along with the Arivians, fought back with everything they had. The battle raged across the sector, explosions lighting up the darkness like fireworks. In the midst of the chaos, Holloway's voice came through the comms. "Stay on target. We need to break their formation. Focus fire on their flagship." The USS Titan fired its main cannons, striking one of the Zervani warships with pinpoint accuracy. The ship exploded in a flash of light, taking several smaller vessels with it. The Zervani retaliated, but the human and Arivian ships were proving to be more resilient than the Empire had anticipated. Despite their initial success, it was clear that the Zervani weren't going to back down easily. Their retaliation was vicious, and the human fleet was beginning to show signs of strain. Holloway could see it on the screen. More and more Zervani ships were swarming in, their numbers overwhelming. "We need to make a move," Dr. Carter said urgently. "If we don't disable their flagship soon, they'll overrun us." Holloway took a deep breath. "We'll take the risk. Launch all stealth ships, target the flagship. We go in now." The stealth ships, developed using the reverse-engineered Zervani technology, slipped past enemy sensors and positioned themselves around the flagship. With a single coordinated strike, they unleashed everything they had. The flagship, the Zervani's pride and joy, was torn apart in seconds. The Zervani fleet faltered. Their flagship was gone, and the morale of their forces crumbled. The human and Arivian fleets pressed the advantage, pushing the remaining Zervani ships into retreat. The battle was won, but Holloway knew the war was far from over. The Zervani would regroup, they always did. But for the first time, humanity had shown that they could defeat the Empire, not just survive its wrath. Holloway looked out at the aftermath of the battle. The victory was sweet, but the cost was high. The Zervani Empire had been wounded, but they were far from finished. And humanity's rise was only just beginning. The battle in the Orden sector had been a hard-fought victory, but it had shifted the tide of war. The Zervani Empire, though humiliated and crippled by the loss of their flagship, were far from defeated. The galaxy, once trembling beneath the boot of the Empire, was now seeing the first signs of change. And at the center of it all was humanity. General Holloway stood in the war room, watching as the latest intelligence reports poured in. The Zervani had retreated, but only temporarily. They had regrouped and were now reassembling their forces in the Deep Sky cluster. Holloway knew this wasn't the end. If anything, it was the calm before the storm. But Earth had come a long way from the defenseless backwater planet it had once been. They were no longer just surviving, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy. "General, we've received a transmission from the Galactic Council," Lieutenant Aldrich said, her voice tense. "They want to discuss terms of surrender." Holloway's brow furrowed. "Surrender? From the Zervani?" He glanced at the screen, where the faces of the Galactic Council members appeared. The leaders of various species, many of whom had been subjugated by the Zervani, watched him expectantly. The representative of the Galactic Council, an alien from the Jovian system, spoke first. "General Holloway, the Zervani's defeat at the Orden sector has shaken their dominance. It's clear that your forces, in conjunction with your allies, have the power to end their reign. We are prepared to help broker a peace deal, one that will ensure the Zervani's withdrawal from all occupied systems and the freedom of those they have oppressed for centuries." Holloway took a moment to process the request. The idea of peace was tempting, but it felt premature. Humanity had fought too hard, bled too much, to simply stop now. They had a chance to strike decisively, to push the Zervani out of their corner of the galaxy entirely. But peace would mean stability. It would mean an end to the suffering of millions. Was that not worth fighting for? What guarantee do we have that the Zervani will honor any peace deal? Holloway asked, his voice steady but filled with suspicion. "They've never shown mercy before." The Jovian representative paused. "We cannot control them, General. But with your strength backing the peace talks, we believe the Empire will have no choice but to comply." Holloway exchanged glances with Dr. Carter and Raktor, both of whom were deep in thought. They had all seen the carnage the Zervani had caused. They had all suffered. The question now was whether they could trust the galaxy's leaders to secure a lasting peace. "General, this is an opportunity we cannot afford to ignore," Raktor said, his voice grim but determined. "The Zervani may be a threat, but we are all exhausted. War is costly, and our forces are stretched thin. If we can end this without further bloodshed, we must." Dr. Carter, always the pragmatist, added, "We've inflicted enough damage. If we push forward, we risk losing everything we've gained. A peace deal might give us the leverage we need to rebuild and strengthen our alliances. It could also prevent further destruction." Holloway weighed their words carefully. The victory at the Orden sector had sent a message, but this was different. The fate of the galaxy now rested in his hands, and a single wrong move could tip the scales toward catastrophe. "Fine," he said finally, his voice firm. "We'll open peace talks. But mark my words, the Zervani will not get off easy. They will face consequences for their actions." The peace talks were set to take place at a neutral station in the Hesperian system, a location far from the Zervani's sphere of influence. Holloway, along with representatives from the Arivians and other rebel factions, made their way to the station, ready to negotiate with the Galactic Council and the Zervani representatives. The Zervani arrived, their once proud fleet now a shadow of its former self. Their commanders were stoic, but Holloway could see the frustration in their eyes. They had underestimated humanity, and it had cost them dearly. The talks were tense, and for hours, Holloway and the other leaders negotiated fiercely. The Zervani were not quick to concede, but the weight of their defeats was undeniable. Eventually, they agreed to the terms laid out by the Galactic Council: the withdrawal of their forces from occupied systems, reparations for the species they had subjugated, and a commitment to peace. It was a fragile peace, but it was a victory nonetheless. Humanity, once a forgotten species on a backwater planet, had risen to power and changed the fate of the galaxy. They had not only survived, they had triumphed. And now, as the Zervani retreated into the shadows, humanity's rise had just begun. As Holloway stood on the balcony of the station, overlooking the stars, he allowed himself a rare moment of peace. There was still much to be done, and the galaxy would always be full of threats. But humanity had proven that even in the face of the greatest odds, they could rise. The future was theirs.